This is True Multifamily, the show where we dive in on what really happens after closing a multifamily property. We're going to expose the role of asset manager. That's the person who has the responsibility of seeing the vision, executing the plan, and managing people, budgets, and timelines, all to deliver returns for our investors. These are the real struggles, the real victories, and the real stories of asset management. Welcome back to another episode of True Multifamily. I am here today with Wally Conway, the creator of Monument Commercial Building Inspections. Did I get that right, Wally? Welcome to the show.
You absolutely did, Justin. You're on a roll.
Yeah, doing well. So far, so good. Wally, thank you for coming today. We're so excited to have you as part of this PodMax event. And it's just a fantastic day of podcasting. And I'm so great to meet you because, we're buying apartments really, we just closed on one and we've got some offers out now. And so this is something, due diligence, inspections is something that's always top of my mind. And it's something that I know our listeners are going to get a ton of value out of because you are the man with the experience. You've been doing this for how long? Tell us a little bit about you, how you started, how long you've been in business.
By way of background, grew up in Camden, New Jersey, so I can relate to your New Jersey roots. I escaped from there. I escaped from New Jersey, not by the Garden State Parkway per se, but I went down to the Naval Academy. And I graduated from there, ended up as a Navy pilot, started playing in real estate during my time on active duty. And when I retired, we got into the home inspection business. And shortly thereafter, it also evolved into commercial buildings. And here we are today, 40,000 plus buildings later.
Wow, 40,000. What year did you start this company?
94.
1994. All right. So that great. Succinct as a bio as I've ever heard, I think.
Where were you in 94, Justin?
94. I was 6.
6. Well, you were potty trained, so that's good.
There you go. Kindergarten, I guess, first grade, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
No. So that's what I love your experience because you literally have my whole lifetime of experience doing this stuff. And so talk to me about so you're in the Navy, right? And you said you're playing around in real estate. And what makes you decide I'm going to come back and open up an inspection business?
Well, when I retired, I had to do something. And I made the decision that it would be in real estate. And what was really strange was, there I was just about 40 years old. I had never written a resume. I'd never been on a job interview. And that looked intimidating. And it looked less frightening to start my own business. Decided it would be real estate. And in 94, the home inspection and building inspection universe was very, very new. So it was sort of blue ocean. So there were 9 home inspectors in the Jacksonville, Florida phone book in 1994. Within about 3 years, our staff of inspectors in Jacksonville was larger than the total industry in Jacksonville.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been good to me. And then the commercial buildings are better. Much like as a real estate investor, one building with 400 doors is significantly simpler than 400 buildings, each with 1 door.
Well, let's talk about that concept because I agree from a management side and for a whole number of reasons. But, to someone that is, maybe has no construction experience or maybe has only dabbled in the small multifamily space, thinking about a property with 400 doors, I mean, that's just monumental. What differences are there? What are the things you have to look for when you start getting into properties that are multi-hundred units in scale that you may not on a smaller?
Well, the primary difference is a few zeros when you get right down to it.
Yeah.
There's a few zeros giving you more doors. There's a few more zeros in the mortgage payment. There's a few more zeros in the risk. And that's where due diligence really comes in. And especially for that first time multifamily investor, you're so excited to do that first deal that sometimes the due diligence falls by the wayside, not just the physical due diligence, but the economic due diligence. But as it relates to the physical due diligence, here's something we've discovered, Justin, over 40,000 inspections. Bad news never gets better with time. When I was a Navy pilot, I had a commanding officer tell me that bad news doesn't get better with time.
I could not agree more.
In the history of real estate, there's never been a surprise that was good.
Yeah.
You're not going to buy 400 units, close on it, and then go, well, looky here, there's actually 500 units. So we can agree that all surprises in real estate are bad news. And in multiple family investing, there's multiple opportunities for multiple zeros in the cost of the bad news. So the due diligence is about assuring you have a complete understanding of the physical condition of the asset you're about to purchase. So what is its physical condition today? What are the age of these components? What's the reasonable life expectancy of the components? And what's the capital reserves I'm going to need immediately, which isn't reserves. What do I need to do immediately? What do I need to do 1, 3 years, 5, 10 years out? And you go, oh, I now understand where I am. And it isn't to say when you do great diligence, it's necessarily a buy, no buy decision. That's a piece of it. But more importantly, it's saying, what am I buying? What price should I buy it for? What should I expect and prepare for as I own this property so I can own it enjoyably and profitably?
Yeah, I love that. You know, we look at that first pass of what you just said, the buy, no buy. We call those deal killers. You know, pretty much I feel like in my experience, we can pretty much spot the deal killers, which might be some massive thing that we didn't see the first time around or before the offer was submitted. That just might be this, you know, okay, I got to go replace all the roofs and it's going to cost me $3 million. Maybe that's a deal killer. I don't know. Totally depends on what you're buying it for and what your plan is. But
the beauty of that, Justin, here's the beauty of that. A $3 million problem in a 400 unit building may be something that many people are unwilling to take on.
That's right.
But another person sees that as an opportunity. That's now a property that's less competitive in the marketplace. I'm comfortable with roofs. I understand the math behind this. And suddenly that $3 million obstacle became a $5 million opportunity.
I love it.
Because you took on something that was distressed. So, to me, every property can move forward if it happens with great due diligence, open eyes, and the math works.
That's the key. The math has to work. Absolutely. So if you bought over, or if you're under contract for more, it's just a conversation. Look, we found this roof. It's going to cost $3 million. That's the time to renegotiate.
Right.
So let's dig in on the due diligence process for multifamily, because it's not something that gets broken down in enough detail, in my opinion. So talk to me about, look, I get a property under contract. Is that the time I should be calling you guys, and what do you do? How do we go through this due diligence process?
Well, no, that's not the time. That's late.
Okay.
You want to have relationships with the team of people who are doing your due diligence far before you found the first property. And by having those conversations and those relationships, one, you'll choose properties that are more appropriate to your risk tolerance, more appropriate to the scope of any repair you might want to take on. So you want to begin that conversation specifically with your building inspector early, so that they can help you develop an eye, especially for the first-time multifamily person, develop an eye for those things that may be deal killers for you, because everybody's got a different deal killer thing. For one person, it's roofs. For another, it's structure. For another, it's parking. God only knows.
Yeah.
It's having the conversations to sort out what properties are appropriate for my risk tolerance, my budget, and my intentions with the property. So you want to create that relationship early on. You want to have a relationship where you can call and say, hey, I'm looking at 400 units. I'm seeing this. What else does that trigger in your mind that I might want to double check?
Yep.
The more due diligence you do and the more refined you get your eye prior to offer, the better your offer is going to be.
Absolutely. Okay. So I chat with you, you talk me off the air. Someone on your team is, maybe helping me refine my budget, my price a little bit. We get it under contract, or at least the LOI gets accepted. Talk us through that process of due diligence.
So the first order of business in due diligence as it relates to the inspection process is defining the scope and expectation. When we're dealing with savvy or sophisticated people who've done this a lot before, They might say, I want to know about structure, I want to know about roofs, and I want to know about electrical service. Okay, we can laser in on that. For people when this is new, you cannot have too much in depth of due diligence. So you start looking at, hey, I got 400 doors. How many of them do I want to look at? How much detail do I need to be comfortable to anticipate my near-term and long-term expenses? And what happens very often, especially, Justin, with the neophyte, is they're looking to drive the expense of the due diligence to as close to zero as they can get it. When you drive the expense of your due diligence lower and lower and lower, you're driving your risk of unknown expense higher and higher and higher. So I'm an advocate, especially for the first timers, to get the most intense due diligence that you can, and you'll learn from it. You'll reduce risk from it, and it will help you refine the properties that you make offers on. It'll help you refine your due diligence further, so you get things where they make sense for the type of investor you are, your risk tolerance, how you receive information. So be aggressive and overspend in due diligence rather than overspend significantly. We're adding more zeros in unexpected expense.
I want to give some color here on this because I know we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but everything you're saying to me is 100% resonating with what I did on my first property. I bought, in my first indication, I bought a 40-unit property in a market that's about 6 hours away from me, and I trusted my contractor with the whole due diligence process. And so I think a lot of people, when you're first getting started, you might find a property manager, you might find a contractor that the property manager knows and say, let's just walk this property with the contractor. And, unfortunately, we missed a lot. We missed a lot of things that have cost me over the next 2.5 years, a lot of money, time, and energy to remedy. Contractors come and go. And unfortunately, that contractor is no longer working with us, but the problems remain.
That is probably the most common mistake we see.
Yeah.
Someone says, well, let's just have a contractor look at it. That's what they do. It isn't what they do.
Correct.
And here's how this breaks out. There are people who design things. We call them architects. There's people who build things. We call them builders. There's people who repair things. We call those repair guys. And there's people who inspect things. Those skill sets are vastly different. Foundationally, they're similar, but in how they approach a project and how they get that information documented and delivered and explained to that investor are vastly, vastly different. So you absolutely want to begin with aggressive due diligence from the inspection side. Then where the contractor comes in is looking at that property, looking at that discovery document and saying, this is the reasonable cost to correct. That's their expertise. Here's what it should cost. And here's the timeline. When we substitute one for the other, it doesn't go well. And even in repair, there's people who could build you 400 units that couldn't repair 400 units if their life depended on it.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's the same on the flip-flop. There's people who were superb at building, repair, and maintenance that couldn't build a new project out of the ground if their life depended on it.
And by the way, we're using 400 as an example, but this is the same if it's 4, 40, or 400. All of these levels, I 100% agree with you. And I regret not bringing someone in like you that could inspect that property.
Yeah, I will share with you, it plays all the way down to single family houses. We've been in tens of thousands of single family houses in our sister company, Home Pro Inspections. It always plays the same. And if you can envision the idea of, if after the due diligence, after the purchase, you did your negotiation, you own it, and you're a year out, if your only regret about the due diligence was you spent a few dollars more than you anticipated, that's a success. Because if you saved a few dollars on your due diligence and it's cost you $5,000, $10,000, $300,000, and oops, they didn't know that, that's not good. Due diligence is cheap.
Uh, since you brought up cost, can you give me a range? And I'm sure it varies wildly based on how in depth you are. You mentioned the different scope, but if I'm going to buy, let's say, a 50 unit property, what is a reasonable expectation of a due diligence cost for a company like yours?
If you went all in and said, do everything you can reasonably do to drive my risk as low as it can reasonably be, you'd probably be at $100 a door.
Okay.
As we move down from that, it gets more and more affordable, but there's fewer and fewer things we'll be able to do. I'll give you an example. Underground sewer lines, huge risk, right? To have to replace cast iron lines under 400 units and out under parking, you could easily get into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
We can send a sewer scope down every one of those, and you could know everything that can be known. We can send the sewer scope down one per building as a representative sampling. You're going to know quite a bit. Or the guy can say, nah, I know they're old, we'll just go with it. Well, it goes to a comfort level, and you exchange comfort for dollars in due diligence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what a reasonable cost, by the way, $100 a door to really find out everything you need to know about a property. Like you said, you're fronting that, but listen, if you're doing a deal and you're serious, that's built into your closing costs, your upfront costs. It's a fee that you have to pay to protect your investors, to protect yourself, the operations of the property.
And that's a swag,
well
Justin,
spent.
To make the math easy.
Sure.
As we get down to a duplex, it isn't going to cost you $200.
Right.
But,
but absolutely, that's a good frame of reference, because some people might be thinking, that costs $100,000, right, or $5,000. So thank you for that placement for us. No one's going to call and say, "Hey, I heard you say exactly $100 a door."
Yeah, and if it's 200, it's okay too.
That's right. So okay, so what? You've got some stories for us, I know, about due diligence, but I want to just have you take us through the process. What are you looking at? What are you doing? Let's take 50, 100 unit property, a 400 unit property, if you want to use. Talk us through what happens when I hire you and say, yes, come give me everything. What is it that you're actually doing at this property? And then what do I get at the end of it?
Well, the first order of business is a big overview. It's just walking through the property and looking. When we do a PCA, property condition assessment, we're actually doing record searches and permit searches. And before any of the field staff is at the building, we know everything that can be known from online. We know the environmental positions, we know the permit positions, we know as much as can reasonably be known. So that inspector or group of inspectors, if we're in 400 units, they are already prepared with specific documentation on your building, as well as the experiences from every other building, and saying, what are the things here that are likely to be the expensive, dangerous showstoppers? And we're on to that big picture. We get a grip on that very quickly, and then start drilling down to the more specific, more nitpicky, more granular, you might say, expenses that you may face. And that's really how it goes. What to expect when you're done is an executive summary that in one page gives you clarity. And particularly if you're syndicating or you've got other investors, gives that whole team clarity in an instant. Does this building look like something we can move forward on? And then beyond the executive summary could be any place from 5 to 50 to 500 pages of substantiation to sit and say, this is it at the granular level. So you'll know what's going on roof-wise, what's going on structure-wise, heating and air, electric, plumbing, detail it all out as far as it needs to be. Then that document, after the initial decision document, can be separated into the action pieces to who needs to go there.
So the action pieces, that's something that's very interesting to me. So if you guys identify, let's go with the sewer line crack, since you brought that up before. So you find a problem when you scope my sewer line. The report, I'm assuming, has some pictures and a description of where it is. But is that's something I can then take to a contractor, a plumber, and everything that I need should be included in that report from you?
Absolutely. Well done, which I like to think at Monument Commercial Inspections we do. that document, or the segment document appropriate in this case to a plumber, can be emailed to them And there should be sufficient clarity in the document that without even visiting the property, they can give you a range. Say, Justin, this is somewhere between 60 and 90 until we get into the specifics. We don't know. So you get orders of magnitude instantly from the document. We'll actually give you orders of magnitude on it.
Oh,
and
okay.
then when it comes to the actual proposal, what's so valuable about great due diligence is if you're in the let's get 3 bids, they're bidding on exactly the same scope of work.
Absolutely.
Not their opinion of what needs to be done, but rather our discovery on what's presently defective. That brings your bid range much tighter and lets you make much better decisions.
I love that. I love that because especially, like we're dealing right now, our latest acquisition was 336 units and we've got, I've got a $4 million CapEx spend over the next few years. And there's so many pieces that we're building off of it. And it's so helpful to have one scope document, one set of that says, this is the problem. This is the solution. Now give me a price for that solution.
Exactly.
And then I can bring in as many contractors as I need. Like you said, I can send it out to multiple people and it just makes that whole process that run that much more smoothly.
Even Justin, if the 3 contractors have different opinions on the remedy, they've agreed on the scope.
Correct.
And that's what's critical. So using the sewer line as an example, one may say remove and replace, and that has a number. Another may say we're going to reline them. Mm-hmm. Another may say the document has been specific enough that we can just repair the specific areas and the specific units that were defective and probably get 10 more years out of it. Right. So it's about understanding precisely the scope of defect so that those proposals make sense. And you're not going, how in the hell did I get estimates that range from $10,000 to $100,000 when all I asked was, can you fix my sewer line? Because the devil's in the detail, and the Absolutely. Detail is on defining the scope through great due diligence.
Wow. What a great overview of due diligence and so much knowledge that you shared with us. So now let's get into the part where you're going to tell me a story. We talked about ahead of time. I prepped you. You said you got some stories where, due diligence really helped out a buyer, either positive or negative. So lay it on us. What do you have for us?
So I'll share you a due diligence upside down. Historically, due diligence comes from building buyers. And what happens in that scenario is you offer your building for sale. It's got 400 units and it's $40 million just for fun. You offer it. What happens when the due diligence is initiated by the buyer is the price always goes down. So we do the aggressive due diligence, proper due diligence, objective due diligence. Justin then goes to that buyer and says, I know you are asking 40 million. Here's my document. How are you feeling about 28?
Right. As a buyer, of course, that's what I want to do.
And for the vast majority of us, when we acquire something, though we may acquire and hold, at some point it's about sale. So when we're selling that asset, we're even seeking investors in that asset. If the due diligence is done by the seller, here's what it looks like. I've got 400 doors. I'm asking $40 million. And I've based that $40 million on its cash flow projections and all these other good things and its present physical condition as defined in this document. We've just removed the primary leverage point away from the buyer.
Because you're disclosing everything at that point.
You've disclosed it. So if you drive the surprise toward minimal, you're saying, this is my 400 doors, warts and all. It's everything I know about it physically. Here's everything about cash flow. Here's everything about everything, and it's $40 million. Rather than have the buyer bring a reason for you to receive less.
I love that. We are in talks to offload one of our assets in Q1 here. And this is very similar to the conversation that we've just been having is let's make sure that we disclose everything. We were not even talking about going to this level, but might make sense. I see the value in it because there's a strike price that we know we want and we believe we can get it. And we know that there are still some projects at this property. And so we were going to document with photos and a description, but why not hand over this professionally produced
it's
report?
so interesting, right? Justin, you mentioned strike price.
Yeah.
Due diligence initiated by the seller and disclose supports strike price. The exact same due diligence, if it came from the buyer's side, reduces that price.
You're absolutely right.
And it's always by more than the cost of the due diligence.
Oh, for sure. Right. Such a, buyer comes in and sees these problems, they're going to round up and they're going to assume there's way more problems behind the walls and this and that. And okay, this, where it might be 200,000 to fix, they're saying $500,000, right?
So let's make it way more modest than 400 doors. Make it 40 doors.
Okay.
Let's make it 40 doors, and 40 doors might cost us $4 million. Is that somewhere near a reasonable swag, just for the heck of it?
Why not?
Makes my math easy.
Works. That works.
So we have 40 doors asking $4 million. If the buyer does the due diligence and is going to ask for some concession, we'll just say price reduction, and it's 5%, what did that cost? And by the way, nobody asked for 5%, right? So in a $4 million building, we're looking at people asking for a 200, 500,000 or more concession.
Yeah.
If you spent $10,000 in due diligence and disclosed it to protect that $4 million strike price, you've removed the fuel that he was going to use to ask for the 200,000 off of the 4 million.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the most advanced, most profitable multi-investment strategies there is. Remove the negotiation power from the other side proactively.
Just hold, please. I'm writing that down because that was amazing. Wally, this has been fantastic. You're blowing my mind. It's so timely because we are working to sell some assets. And so I believe we'll be chatting very soon.
Well, because my dear Aunt Dottie still lives in Leisure Town down by Medford, it's possible that you could negotiate with Monument Commercial Building Inspections, and I'll have staff take care of this for you.
There you go. Well, we've got property in North Carolina, which is a little bit closer to you guys. So
yeah, we can take care of that too.
You can handle us in North Carolina. That's
truthfully,
great.
At 400 doors, we can put a crew on a plane anywhere in the country.
Sure. That makes sense. Well, Wally, this has been incredibly educational and informative. Please let our audience know, how they can find you, hear more about you. I mean, we didn't even scratch the surface on all the great media that you're doing. So tell them where they can hear more about you.
Yeah. Happy to share with anyone in any way we can help them, whether they're a neophyte investor or you're managing 5,000 doors. We're happy to have a conversation. The easiest way is right through the website, monumentcommercial.com. monumentcommercial.com.
There you go. Wally Conway, thank you so much for coming on the show. We definitely appreciate it. And we will talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks for listening to another episode. Check out our website at truemultifamily.show. And if you have an amazing story to tell, share it on our Facebook community, and you might just be the next guest on the show. We're also on all other social networks. Just search True Multifamily. I'm really, really proud to have the show produced by our company, On Air Brands. Check us out at onairbrands.com. We also have an incredible, unique podcasting event that we would love for you to be a part of. Check that out at podmax.co.